Hi everyone, this is Anna Markin, and this is my report on Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. Jacqueline Woodson is an award-winning American author who published her first book in 1990. Since then, Jacqueline has published many different types of books, including young reading novels, adult novels, and illustrated books for children. She is known for her positive writing style that she uses to tackle challenging topics for young readers, including race, sexuality, or social class. Out of all of her award-winning books, I chose to study Brown Girl Dreaming because of all of the awards that it's won. It's won 4 in total, including the National Book Award for Young Adults Fiction, Coretta Scott King Award, the NAACP Image Award, and the Newbery Medal of Honor. Brown Girl Dreaming is a poetic time capsule into Jacqueline Woodson's childhood. We, the reader, get to experience Jacqueline's childhood through her eyes and from her personal narrative. We get to feel the wonder that she finds in her backyard in South Carolina while living with her grandparents. We also feel the struggle that she goes through when she is separated from her mother and has to move to New York City, or when she gets a new baby brother. But we also feel this sense of accomplishment that she achieves once she starts succeeding in school and finds her own voice. The audience can also experience history through Jacqueline's perspective. Because Jacqueline was born in 1963, her entire life is bookmarked with important historical events. She recalls white-only signs being painted over in her hometown, riots going awry, high schools being burnt down due to protest efforts, and also hearing Michael Jackson for the first time on the radio. This book was written with a middle school aged audience in mind. Because this book was written entirely in poetic phrasing, it means that it features a lot of figurative language. This means that the intended audience for Brown Girl Dreaming needs to be an audience that understands simile, metaphor, and symbolism. Figurative language and poetic styling are topics that are usually introduced and taught in middle school. Figurative language being used throughout verse poetry is a very common theme in many middle school level books. Black Girl Dreaming also gave me the opportunity to learn a few new things as well. The first topic that I learned a lot about was segregation. Throughout the book, we see Jacqueline and her family moving from state to state, from Ohio to South Carolina to New York, back to South Carolina. And during that time, we see a lot of change in law and policy regarding race and segregation. It was saddening yet eye-opening to see how the laws could change from state to state and over this period of time. For instance, her and her family could go wherever they wanted in New York or Ohio, but the moment they were in South Carolina, everything changed. All stores except for one were still segregated. Black people were forced to sit in the back of the bus, and schools were still segregated, so her older siblings were not allowed to attend white-only schools. The second topic that I learned quite a bit about has to do with lead poisoning. In the 50s and 60s, cheap buildings used to paint their walls with lead-filled paint because it was cheaper than other materials. This also means that it would flake easier. These little flakes of paint would be sweet to the taste, so young children would be more likely to eat them. This is what happens to Jacqueline's baby brother in the story, and he is hospitalized for a long time. Next, I learned some very interesting facts about the Jehovah's Witness religion. In the story, Jacqueline is baptized into the Jehovah's Witness church, which has very strict rules. She has to attend services multiple times a week, and she's restricted from everyday activities that she's accustomed to. For instance, she cannot participate in the Pledge of Allegiance when in school. She has to tell her teachers that she has to leave the classroom because otherwise it'll be seen as her worshiping a false idol. Additionally, Jehovah's Witnesses are restricted from participating in other celebrations that are not holy. This means no celebrations such as birthday parties, Halloween parties, or anything of the like. To better evaluate Brown Girl Dreaming, it is best to define it as an interpretive piece of nonfiction. This means that while it's a research piece of history, it also has its own interpretive lens. Since Jacqueline was so young when these events were happening, we are seeing things through her perspective, which is a little more personal than a traditional, strict non-fiction piece of work. This book also follows an expository writing structure where it depends on description, sequence, comparison, and cause and effect to tell its story. The author gives poetic descriptions of the people and settings of the book, so we feel like we are actually there in real time as things are occurring. And while the timeline of the story changes pace throughout the book, the timeline is still linear and sequential from one another, so the reader can follow along with the story easily. The use of compare and contrast is used throughout the book as well. For instance, during times of negativity and strife, she will contrast her settings, like New York or South Carolina, to show her disdain. But during times of comfort and welcome, she'll compare herself, like herself, to her mother so she can feel comfort and welcomed. To help guide the audience on the journey of her life story, the author has included many organizational tools and visual cues for them to use. This includes a table of content, a family tree, and many portraits. The vulnerable yet sincere text of Brown Girl Dreaming gives a very unique experience to the history of segregation and growing up during the civil rights movement in the United States of America. Jacqueline's unique sense of storytelling and wonderful voice makes the story of segregation all the more personable, real, and understandable, especially for young readers. I would absolutely recommend Brown Girl Dreaming to any reader between the ages of 10 and 14. Its unique perspective and awesome sense of storytelling is a great way to teach history in a new way that is both enlightening and endearing.